And then this guy might have been featured in the Bosk video. This is my second version of what John Mallow called Crocker in that Cantina sketch. Originally, my Crocker was a Bosk that I was doing something to it and I accidentally stripped paint from the forearm. I don't recall. I just remember going, hey, I wouldn't have thought of that, but his arms are yellow underneath the plastic because it's one continuous piece of plastic and they molded in whatever color is going to match the body best, I guess. So it was the yellow of the upper sleeve, and then everything from the elbow or above the elbow down was painted. And when I uncovered that bit of yellow, I was like, I want to see what he looks like with all yellow limbs. So I did, and then there wasn't enough contrast, so I said, keep the yellow limbs, lose the yellow flight suit. And so the Crocker that you see in Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins had his flight suit masked off and repainted, and I used a can of Tester's gray paint, but it was gloss. And I had bought it for a lunar landing model kit when I was very young. And so somewhere I have this awful looking glossy lunar lander. I think I finally disliked it enough that I threw it away. But little pieces of it survived into other projects for a long time. I kind of wish that I'd kept that Crocker the way he was and just made a new one, because obviously this is just 9 Nun from the neck down and Bosk's head from the neck up. So what did I do with that Bosk body? Not sure. Maybe somewhere still waiting to be discovered in a crate somewhere is one more iteration of Crocker that I kept, and that would be really cool if I were able to find that. So that's several Cantina patrons and not 21B. But not everybody got repainted. This guy is a second hammerhead that's visible in Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins in the Cantina sequence. And all I did was repaint his bodysuit orange, just to have a second hammerhead for that shot. I think, though, that this guy, or a regular hammerhead, also shows up in the Jabba's Palace interpolated scene wearing a dyed gray Yoda cloak, and I know I've seen that somewhere since I was in Mississippi. Like when I was getting a lot of things out to make those videos, I know I saw it somewhere then. I just can't remember exactly where I saw it. So there's a possibility that that will show up. And one more figure from the Cantina sequence is this guy right here. Now this is just random spaceman until you take the helmet off. And then he's Boshek. And I could think of no more perfect figure to use to make a Boshek back in the late 80s, early 90s than Ace from G.I. Joe. All I did was painting. Matter of fact, I painted him first with a magic marker and then later with a rattle can of black spray paint. And I masked off a lot of areas. Some of this stuff is exactly the plastic that Ace is molded in. The boots, the vest. He's more articulated than a Star Wars figure, so he was actually able to kind of give a jerk of his thumb saying, yeah, you want Chewbacca over here. By the way, this is what the O-ring that's inside of him right now looks like. And this is what the O-ring that I took out of him looked like the other day. So yeah, he was definitely in need of a little changeover. And it's not even a modern O-ring. This is my dad's O-ring kit from who knows when. That part of my toolkit. So speaking of dad's tools, I was thinking I was going to shoot this as I'm ad-libbing on the fly and go back and edit it in earlier, but I'll just put it here now. How did I cut coat hanger wire? I just used this pair of snippers that was my parents'. My mom used to run a florist shop, so she always was cutting wire with these. And one day I needed it for a project, and then one day I got married and moved into an apartment, and then one day I moved into a house, and then one day I got divorced, and then one day I moved back to my parents, and then one day I got married to somebody else, and then one day I moved into a house, and then I had kids, and decades went by. And for some reason, I took this over to my parents' house. I think I was working on my proton pack and I was needing my dad's help with some of the soldering. And I had this with me, and he goes, there those are. I've been looking for those for a long time. Like, yeah, probably decades. I was like, yeah, they've been with me for a long time. He immediately had to go and show them to Mom. And he's like, I told you I couldn't find them. He's had them this whole time. So, sorry, Dad. Sorry. Oh. Let's do one more, and then we'll call it a day for these. Several places in Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins you will see things lit. And the way they are lit is with this Lego set that I bought via mail order many years ago. It runs off 3 C-cell batteries, and it's got a switch here, and you just turn it on and off. So when the Sandcrawler, and you can see lights in the windows, that's in there. When 3PO is on board the Sandcrawler and it's a Dawn Post mask, and his eye lights flick off and back on for a split second, just the way they do in that scene in the movie, that's deliberate. That's not an accident. I wanted them to flicker in that shot to match the film. And it's these taped to the inside of a Dawn Post mask that I'm puppeteering like a puppet. I'm not wearing it. Anytime, I can't even think of all of them sitting here. There's a panel on the Death Star that's blinking to indicate that they have the tracking device on board the Falcon. And so that's this light, and I'm back there. Yeah, and I punched a hole in the cardboard of the Death Star to make that shot. So see, production value, there you go. But perhaps the most famous shot that it's in is the Probot shot. Now there are 2 of these little light bricks and an extra piece of wire that will plug into this piece of wire. Let me see if I can show that on camera. And now, if we take that brick off so it's not lighting up, let me see where the hole is, then the Probot will rise into the shot, his eye light will turn on, and he will exit frame. I think actually in the movie he goes this direction. So yeah, I did that shot both in real snow and later against like a white sheet for the Empire Strikes Back portions of Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins. But anything that you see lighting up on camera, I can't think of an exception to this. I can't think of any other lights that I used. It was always this Lego light set right here with 3 C-cell batteries inside the brick. Yeah, so simple. But a Kenner toy couldn't do that. So I had to separate the dome and put masking tape in there. And then the rest of that masking tape is to prevent spill light from happening at the seam. So, and then it goes, these little wires, you were able to feed through, thank God that hole was that big, into the underside. And then you just hide the wire on the opposite side from where you've got the hole. And voila, the trick she is done. So, and that's been customized for a very long time, and that is my only dedicated light up eye Probot. This is the one. I have others that are, you know, pristine and mint, but this is the one from Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins. So that is the actual prop used. And I've come to the end of today's little list. I don't know if I'm going to do this all as one video or break it into several, but thanks for watching. Oh, I turned off the light instead of turning off the camera. But wait, there's more. So, as I was editing this video, I kept going back to Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins and trying to capture those perfect screen grabs to illustrate what I was talking about. Now, number one, as I was handling some of these figures, little details would pop to mind, and I'd be like, oh wow, I remember making that figure now. That was a piece from this figure, and this was a piece. So yeah, the actual tactile sensation of holding them in my hands again, things were coming back to me that don't come back to me when I just watch Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins. But as I was watching it, I'd go, oh, I know what that is. So I have a couple more things to show you. Let me piggyback on one thing that we already discussed, which was the coat hanger wire. Now, this wasn't only used to suspend the Not 2-1B figure because he couldn't stand on his own. Coat hanger wire is all throughout Whoever Dies the Most Toys Wins. I would slide it up inside the hull of a land speeder, a great big long piece, much longer than this, and hook it. I had a hook in there that would fit around an internal post in the Kenner land speeder, and I would fly the land speeder into shot, suspending it from off camera, cantilevered on this boom arm. Very similar to what they did in the movie, actually. So that was one use of it. There's a scene where the Micro Collection Millennium Falcon lands, and another shot where it takes off, and both of those were done. I actually saw a video just yesterday, I think it was, and it was David Copperfield, and he had this levitation rig with a curtain behind him it was very suspicious because he's standing on the lip of the Grand Canyon and there's nothing behind him except this arch with a curtain for no reason. Obviously, it's hiding the boom arm in the folds of the curtain. You know, when you look at it this way, those folds in the curtain are hiding the movement of the thing that's keeping him levitating. And I did that, but I didn't use a curtain. I used the monkey grass in my parents' backyard. So that was my dividing vertical stripes that the rod was hidden inside of. So the Micro Collection Millennium Falcon lands and then takes off, and it was, I want to say I had the coat hanger wire wrapped around either the dorsal or the ventral quad turrets. I can't remember. I'll have to look at that as I'm editing this. So let's do this. Here is my Stan Solo Garindin, and he's wearing the cloak. He comes with a vinyl cloak when you buy him from Stan Solo, but this had just enough give in it, this old cloak of Labria's, and prior to that it was Squid Head's, so I could just fit it over his head. And let's see if I can put it back on Labria delicately, without breaking off his glued on horns or ears. I think I've done it. So that's closer to how he looked when Whoever Dies with Most Toys Wins was actually filmed. He had a cloak on. Speaking of cloaks, there's a shot in Mos Eisley, and it's supposed to be Luke and Ben have just sold the land speeder, and they're walking towards us, and a lot of things go on that are references to the actual film. I threw in 8D8 in that shot because he was the only humanoid white robot, and he was supposed to be standing in for CZ3, as a matter of fact. But off in the distance was a hooded, cloaked figure, and it took me a second. I'm like, who is that? What is that? That's Wyoslia. That's the insectoid land speeder dealer that buys the land speeder from them. Do I enter second, Grubhood? Yeah, radio drama. And so I use an insectoid action figure, an Ovion from Battlestar Galactica. And this Ovion figure was one that I won at school in some kind of contest. It was, I don't think it was a drawing. There was something that we did, and they were supposed to give out, you know, a prize for this, a prize for that. And I did something, and they actually made up a category and said that mine was the most inventive or creative or artistic or whatever. So instead of just being, you know, the best, the fastest, they kind of said, you know what, I like that. And what it was, if it's the one I'm thinking of, there were these Valentines that we were supposed to make. And so on my bag for my Valentines, it said, X marks the spot that I love you from, and there was an X at the very bottom of the heart. So yeah, up here was the message, but then you had to look for where the X was. So yeah, that was what got me the award. But in that shot, Wyoslia is not only portrayed by an Ovion, he's portrayed by an Ovion wearing Prune Face's cape. So let's see if we can recreate this moment. This is not my original Ovion. This is not the one I won in the contest. Some of my Battlestar Galactica figures are missing because I photographed them for a book about Battlestar Galactica that I contributed some essays for, and I have completely misplaced all the ones that I photographed. So that is my stand-in, makeshift, grab an action figure off the shelf, Wyoslia custom, temporary custom, I guess you would call it. And I guess I chose that particular cape because it would fit over his ginormous noggin. So he got a big old hit. Also in that scene is this toy right here. Ooh, smack dab in the center of the camera. Offset from the lens, but it hit smack dab in my face in the screen. Where is this toy? This toy is puppeteered from above, and it's the legs that walk between Luke and Ben and the lens of the camera. I actually still have that toy.
A couple of other Battlestar Galactica toys show up in Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins in the form of Luke's wingman during the final battle is a Colonial Viper that gets shot down by a Cylon Raider, forcing Luke to do a comedic double take like, did I just see what I thought I saw?
Other toy lines that showed up in Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins, towards the very end, we see Mork from Ork. Well, you see him from the neck down. I just needed another pilot in that shot. And this robotics figure shows up as well. I think my neighbor Craig had robotics toys. That's all of this stuff. Let's see what's in this box.